Dimitra.
Okay, take it away.
Okay, thanks so much, Dimitra. I want to thank the Greek Institute. The words continuity and community were just used, and I feel that's been their lifelong dedication. And I want to thank Dimitra and her parents, Thanasi and Maria, for what they've done for decades at that magnificent sacred site. We have 11 readers. I'm not sure if Alex is here, so I think after Vasily Key, Jim should go. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to read one poem now, and then we'll read in alphabetical order. And I'll come back at the end and read one more poem.
George,
here's my poem.
Interrupt,
oh, good. I'm glad
Alex.
You're there, Alex.
Yeah. Paron.
Good. Okay. Akuvos from a drone. It's only when I open up the attachment that I see it as seen from above the clouds. My father's village, way up in the Peloponnese. Olympian email sent by my cousin Perry, Pericles Christopoulos. Stucco houses clustered against the cliff. Terracotta rooftops, bright as pistachio nuts. And that sugar cube at the very peak. It must be tiny St. George. Akuvos with its olive groves aglow. Akuvos as seen by the eagle of Zeus. Akuvos as photographed from a drone. But nothing like the snapshot I saw as a child whenever I entered our parlor, where it was always Akuvos up close, but not in color. Circa 1940. For all I knew, it was all in black and staring back at me from under the hood of her shawl. I mean, that village grandmother, I never, but there she was, ancestral shade with one hand over her heart, and lo, in the valley of the shadow of our empty parlor, I saw it, the voice of silent lamentation, Akuvos from a drone. Thank you.
George, who's next?
Frank, I think it's you. You're starting us off. We can't hear you, Frank. Frank? Are you there, Frank?
Watching from afar and admiring as I now carried on my somehow sacred tasks amidst the pillars opposite, not quite within reach. And the next two are a pairing. The first explains the setting of the second. The little jazz room. There's a tiny club, the little jazz room, where a pianist sage holds court, discreetly shaping sounds, sultry modulations, styling the early evening. I jot as he creates and give him my lines before leaving, as cloddish trippers cackle and screech without a thought for the jazzmeister, culling the depths of heart and craft and spirits of times past in their midst. Blue glow, Harleys in double decibels careen for muscle and show. Keyless karaoke wails and growls in open bar fronts. Tipsy tourists teeter with utterly disposable ocean-bound cups. But in a dim blue glow, coal and corcovado and books of American songs, songs of another place in a distant time, soar with verve and velvet from cascades of ivory and ebony. The crafter of the sounds, caresser of the keys, also from another time and who knows, perhaps from another place, makes these nimble notes in this moment as new as in years of Ella and Billy and RCA. And one final one. Reaching. Orange trees, redolent, round, wall fruit, hanging, beckoning, fragrant by my side. In the corner of my eye, as I perch before polished, contoured ebony, gleaming black, singing resonant keys, waiting to be caressed, percussed, cajoled, releasing their voices and rhythms, echoes of other worlds, enrobing the past, embracing the present, reaching into the unknown.
Beautiful.
Is Frank there? Is Frank?
I'll unmute Frank. Frank, you're unmuted.
Okay, I don't think he's getting the connection. So let's go to
How am I
Fred.
now?
Oh, you got it. Okay, good.
Okay. So you can see me and hear me. Okay.
You can
Just let me start off with one quick sonnet called Aegean. This was a friend of ours, Vas Redos, who used to belong to the Greek Institute. She died about 2 or 3 years ago. She was a great, of course, admirer of Greece, and we had traveled with her various places. And she had her own opinions about things. So she was very enthusiastic about Greece, very stubborn in her opinions, and very amusing. So she's Greek. So what happened, she was, the events that are in the poem actually happened. She had a sister who burned to death, and she took the name of, she was given the name of the sister, and so on. So I'll just quickly read it, not to take up too much time. Aegean, you were buried in summer heat. A day you would have scouted alone, camera ready across the Acropolis. When ways were free and travelers wise, you and the lizards who flit with the wind fluting the columns. Name for one of your burned to death siblings, you played in that room of triple sorrow. Marked today in Freemason stars, a memorial that industry now houses for meditations. In old age, you burned your kitchen, but you stepped beyond fire. At your wake, a picture poses a woman standing on a ship, monitoring the glittering ocean. All right, so I'll read just 2 choral odes from one from Euripides and one from Aristophanes. I have translated several Greek plays. I'm a professor at Northeastern University. And in the Bacchae of Euripides, if you haven't read it lately, it is about the introduction of the worship of Dionysus to Greece and the resistance to that by the king Pentheus. So one of the things that Euripides is very good at is writing poems about laments, people, especially in tragedies, wishing that they could escape, wishing that they could go somewhere else, and they can't. So the chorus then sings this song, and it mentions Bromius. Bromius is Greek for thunderer. You hear him in the sky right now. It's supposed to derive from the dancing of the Bacchantes with the thumping of their feet, that they sounded like thunder. Okay, so let me fly to Cyprus, island of Aphrodite, where the love gods dwell, charming mortal hearts, and to Paphos, where the 100-mouthed rainless streams of a barbarian river fertilize the fields, and Pieria, seat of the Muses, gift of beauty, holy slope of Olympus, Bromius, Bromius, take me there, Bacchant, Leda, demon, there the graces dwell, there desire carouses, and custom makes us right. Now, I'd like to turn to comedy for the second selection, and this is from The Frogs, which I also translated. And what we see here is the very opposite of what we have in Euripides. Euripides has the right tone, he has the great ancient Greek attitude, nothing too much, Hellenic restraint. So he doesn't go overstate the case, which would end up as poo-poo, and he doesn't understate the case, which would make it flat. So what does a comic writer does? The comic writer violates all these things. The comic writer, for Aristotle, the nature of comedy is incongruity. So the language doesn't fit the subject. In other words, the language is too high or the language is too low for the subject. But what happens here is the chorus are making fun of the two poets who are Aeschylus and Euripides. They're going to have a contest to see who is the better poet. So the chorus, it's of course satire, so you have to make fun of everybody in the play, which Aristophanes has no trouble with. So what happens is you're going to get overstatement, and then you're going to get understatement. This is what is called in ancient Greek bathos, or dropping down. So you drop way below the middle or the high middle that you should be using. So in other words, you gear up the language beyond what it's worth, because it's only an agon, it's only a contest between two poets who each claims that they're the other. So notice that first part of the stanza is going to overstate, the second part of the stanza is going to understate. And oh, now the loud roar shall swell with awful anger, till he espies that rival sharpening his tooth, that glib-tongued man, his enraged eyes shall twirl. So, and then great crested words and quarrels of the glancing helm, splintering axles of wit, when the fine carving one fends off the words of the mind builder's high horse. Bristling the mane of shaggy hair upon his neck, narrowing awful brows, he'll bellow outward trains, bolted fast like ship planks, torn off by his big mouth. Okay, so Evcharisto, and have you go on.
I believe I'm next. Is that right, George? I'm Fred Marchant. Good. I'm honored always to be invited to join you and to be counted among the Philhellenes. And so thank you, George. Thank you, Demetra. Thank you all. I'm going to read some short poems. The first is set in, outside a small village in Messina, a village named Horacopio, and this is a chapel set in an olive grove. It's the St. Friday's Chapel. Paraskivi in the Greek, a wide open field of readiness, the long preparation for the Sabbath. It starts on Friday, is a labor like the months of the Virgin waiting for the birth. Afternoons like this, with warm, milky light that poured into a whitened room and over a courtyard swept clean, and through the wooden doors of the chapel, through the wide open palm fronds, their arms framing the worn threshold, the light falling onto brass, where an unlit candle waited. You could hear the chanting of a prayer that sounded like olive leaves rustling, bowing to the wind as if they too were trying to listen in, to hear any word that lived without irony, as if doubt were a secret hiding in the heart of everything, even deep within the trunk, within the whorls of wood that denote a life has been lived. Its pain teaching how to be like the deep, unsatisfied root, searching for water in clay, giving doubt to the farthest limb, to the rock-hard, inedible seed, the fruit grown heavy all around it, silver green, with hope, and the grove laden. The next poem I'm going to read it's set actually in the same spot, but it's a very different kind of poem, and it really owes its form to those short one-line poems of Yanis Ritsos. And so this is a little bit of a variation. Some of you who know my most recent book, Said Not Said, will remember that a couple of these were used as the coda for that book. This book, Said Not Said, but a couple of these were used. Anyway, this is called Miscellaneous Entries. Swifts from as far away as gods, who also stop and stay. Spirit horses, their white manes on the waves. Sage, thyme, mountains, shade laurel. Narrow doors, lit candles, an icon near tears. Room enough within for one or two to kneel. The goats that turn and ask, what took you so long? I'm going to read a poem now from Said Not Said. And when I showed that to you, I lost my marker to get the page. Hold on. Don't go anywhere.
Fred, afterwards, would you please remember to tell us your background?
I
Many
will.
of us do not know.
Yeah, I was going to do that.
Who you are. Thank you.
That's good. That's good. I was going to do that as an introduction to this poem. It's I live in Arlington. I taught at Suffolk University with George for over 30 years, and I've for most of those years, somehow or another, Greece has always been a part of all my work, and I suppose the hardest thing of all is to say that deep down inside, I understood something about my own life from my encounter with Greek literature, and so it we bonded. This is a poem called "The Migrants," and it comes. It has an epigraph from Hesiod, from Works and Days, and it references the way in which Prometheus stole fire. And what he did is, in Hesiod, he stole it and hid it inside the rather thick trunk, of a fennel trunk of a tree. You know, in the Eastern Mediterranean, the fennel can grow to be quite, you know, quite large, quite tall, and the trunk itself. And the pith inside burns very slowly. So Hesiod, being quite, you know, knowledgeable about farming matters, knew that that pith burned slowly. The migrants. The epigraph. He hid the fire in a tall, hollow stalk of fennel, out of the sight of the Great One who delights in thunder. In those mountains, he met others walking in the same direction. Backpacks, black plastic garbage bags, food sacks, a girl with 2 hard-boiled eggs, the shells flaking off. Some wore t-shirts from the sports teams of the West, and one man still carried an orange life jacket. The hunted, wayward god stood beside a mother who held her infant before her, the same way he held the stalk that carried the embers he had stolen.
Fred, you muted yourself. You need to unmute.
I'm sorry, I didn't do that. It was the gods who got in the way. What? How far along was I? Was it just? Should I start again?
Yeah, why don't you start again, Fred?
All right, thanks. I don't know how it happened. The migrants, the epigraph from Hesiod, he hid the fire in a tall, hollow stalk of fennel, out of the sight of the great ones who delight in thunder. In those mountains, he met others walking in the same direction. Backpacks, black plastic garbage bags, food sacks, a girl with 2 hard-boiled eggs, the shells flaking off. Some wore t-shirts from the sports teams of the West, and one man still carried an orange life jacket. The hunted, wayward god stood beside a mother who held her infant before her, the same way he held the stalk that carried the embers he had stolen. He noted dry myrtle along the side of the road and saw a ground that seemed soft enough for them to sleep on. There would be at least this much tonight: twigs for a fire, perhaps water for tea, some warmth in the morning. Thank you. Now I'll mute myself.
Nick, I think it's your turn.
Currently unmuted. Alt+A button.
To activate, press spacebar.
Thank you, George. I hope I'm coming over okay. I'm Nick Rashodis, or if you prefer, Nicolas Lachiotis. I'm
Nick, you need to come closer to your microphone. We can't hear you.
You should be able to. How about now?
Better. You could come still closer a little bit.
Well, the problem is, well, you may not see me if you, how's this?
Better.
Okay.
It's good.
All right, take 2. I'm Nick Rashodis, Nicolas Lachiotis. I'm Emeritus Professor of History from Framingham State University and Associate of the Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies. Thank you, George, my dear friend, for including me in such a jocund company, as Wordsworth would have said if he were here today. And thanks to the Greek Institute. I'm going to read 4 very short poems, 3 of them connected. Triodion, which is inspired by those first 3 weeks before Lent and is based on the lives of 3 real women and 3 Greek ideals. Helen, Eleni, a face to kill and die for, pictured by the Argives as they pulled back-breakingly hard on those long oars, conjured up during short nights below the walls of Ilium, when wounds and losses were more powerful than hymns to glory. And ever since I first opened those pages of Homer and tried to step over the wrath of Achilles, to imagine that face of Greece, smiling.
Alert. Richie has joined the meeting.
Framed by long brown hair, more symmetrical than Da Vinci's genius. I fell through those eyes into a fabulous history, our treasure and our curse. Irini, peace. Holding you up against the sea and sun, turning you slowly in my arms, exchanging you repeatedly with priests at liturgy, wishing you upon statesmen, abandoned by you for troubled stretches, when standing naked and soulful before an empty page, betraying you in word and deed beyond the power of
Philip Philippius has joined the meeting.
Irene, when will you keep your promise to the Kratos, to the Laos, to the Demos, to the Ecclesia, to me? Calliope, I just love to say your name and to overhear you. Velar, to dental, to rounded lips before a kiss. Calliope. You've come on so many winter afternoons to sit at the tables of so many dimly lit libraries, to unwrap bundles of words that speak of civilizations fallen, of conquests endured, of victories won and battles lost, of love sustained and faded. And then you tie up the notes of your singing and pass on to the next age, the impending seekers of wisdom, who love to say your name, Calliope, and to overhear you. The last poem was actually dedicated to one of our priests.
Alert. Angelique Brewer has joined the meeting.
From the island of Chios, which is where my mother's family comes from. The children have taken me by the hand, and one little girl with hair blacker than the darkness of an Aegean night says, "Here, this is the rock where Homer sang." And I asked his muse to sing for me, and she sings of layers, of Genoa and the Ottoman, of sailors and of fishermen, of triremes and the Paiki. She sings of sweet figs and plump olives, of the intoxicating mastika, of massacres and distant fires, of fleeing migrants huddled in a churchyard. And then she stops, draws breath, turns to songs of beauty, of Saint Marcella, whose grace maddened her father, but earned her the grace of her true father, of that little girl who led me to one of the many rocks consecrated to Homer, with hair blacker than an Aegean winter night, with eyes wider than tomorrow, with skin the envy of the sun, whom I never got to know long enough. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo, Nick. Thank you. I want your
Bravo, Nick.
Calliope poem.
Bravo, Nick. Beautiful job.
So I'm next.
Yeah, your turn, Vasiliki.
Good afternoon, Kalispera, everyone. I'm delighted to be part of this reading today, and I'd like to thank the Greek Institute, Dimitra, George Kalogeris, Peter, who is going to read some poems of mine, and all of you, my fellow poets and friends who are I'm seeing already. So for today, I chose 4 poems, all of which are animated by the ludic spirit, the spirit of play, but most importantly by my passion for Greek language, which I'm teaching currently at BU, Boston University, and also by my passion for Greek mythology and poetry. So the first one is also inspired by the folk tradition and a very personal touch. It's called My Mother's Lullaby. My mother's voice still echoes in my ears. When your eyes first met in the dark, a beautiful love was born in your heart. I remember, little by little, my eyes were closing at the hearing of this lullaby, and I was ready to fly in the valley of dreams, facing the sky and the sea. I longed to catch the youth who became mad for the girl of the sea. To tell you the truth, I never saw him, but I did see the girl of the sea. Beautiful she was, with a smile and an amulet of rose petals on her neck. Like another siren, she was singing to me the ballad of the girl of the sea. They called you the girl of the sea, and the beautiful straight black hair and the red lips thirsty for a kiss. In a coral shirt you appeared at night, envied by the breeze and the wild winds. Terrible spirits spied your beauty. Alas, your charm of roses didn't work. You became a wretched shadow drifted ashore, with eyes and tears shining in the dark. The merciful stars took pity of you. They made the youth be mad for you. When your eyes first met in the dark, a beautiful love was born in your heart. Oh, happy nights shared between you and the bosom of the noble youth. He offered you clear water. You offered him the salt of your body. You exchanged moments of love at your tryst, in your tender nest next to the sea. Desire united you in eternal truth. So the next one is called Minotavros o Eglistos, and I have it only in Greek, but I will say a few things about the myth of the Minotaur in case, or Pasiphae. All of us know the Minotaur, but maybe his mother, Pasiphae, might not be known. So Pasiphae is the mother of the Minotaur, the wife of the legendary king Minos of Crete, and she was cursed by the god Poseidon to be passionate, to have an irrational passion for a bull. And so the offspring was the Minotaur, who was the shame, and he was to be kept closed, locked in the palace where we have the labyrinth, the palace of the double Pelagis 8 axis. So I follow in this poem the inner thoughts of Pasiphae. Μηνόταυρος ο έγκλειστος. Τον εγκομίαζε η Pasiphae στον ύπνο της. Δυνατός, με μάτια υγρά. Έπρεπε κάπως ο βρυχυθμός του, με κάποιο τέχνασμα να έπαβε, να μην βγει παρά έξω το μίασμα. Για τούτο και η θυσία της αθηναϊκής νιώτης αποφάνθηκε. Ο Μηνόταυρος ο έγκλειστος θρεφόταν, θέριζε με το διπλό πέλεκί του, ακαταπαύστος. This could be associated with the coronavirus now, perhaps. And then we have the third poem that was written directly in English. It's inspired by Medea, and my dear friend Peter is going to read it for us. And I'm gonna unmute myself, and I'm gonna come back to another last poem.
Medea. I speak fluent Greek in my dreams, she said. I killed baby birds brilliantly. I smash fresh eggs. I'm proud to say I'm a specialist in cooking eggs and chicken tenders in my kitchen. Spicy feelings, indeed.
Thank you, Peter. So it's the fourth poem now, inspired by Seferis, the Nobel laureate, the first Greek Nobel laureate, and it's entitled Kalogeris to Seferi. In case you don't know what Kalogeris is, it's the pumpkin that they use in Cyprus to carve and do decorative stuff, and also hagiographies in the monasteries. And Seferis has a beautiful poem referring to the monks who do carving in his poetry collection, Kipron ou Methespis. So I was inspired by that. Οι κολόκες του Σεφέρι. Να ψαχουλεύεις, να ζητιανεύεις, να ζουλάς τη μνήμη σου, ένα σύρι τη βυθισμένη στο χρόνο μορφή του. Μια μορφή σκεπασμένη με σκοτάδι. Επειδή έτσι έπρεπε να γίνει, είπες. Επειδή έτσι έμαθες να λες, είπα κλαίγοντας. Γράψε τώρα πάνω στην κολοκύθα του στίχου σου. Χάραξε μια προσωπίδα με ένα βαθύ άνοιγμα για στόμα και 2 μαύρες γραμμές για ματόκλαδα. Κι αν χρειαστεί, μη φοβηθείς να δείξεις ανυπακοή. Μην κουραστείς να σκάψεις όλο και πιο βαθιά. Να σκαλίσεις μια γούρνα εκεί μέσα. Μόλις αδειάσεις και το τελευταίο κουκούτσι, αφού σκάψεις και σκάψεις, οι σκέψεις σου να διάσουν κι αυτές. Ή μπορεί κιόλας ο βασιλιάς της Ασσίνης να σημώσει επιτέλους. Now Peter is going to read the English version of this.
The gourds of Seferis. Fumbling, pleading, pressing the brain to retrieve his form, sunk in oblivion. A dark-covered shade. Because this is how it had to be done, you said. Because this is what you learned to say, I said in tears. Carve your lyrics now on the pumpkin. Draw a mask with an open space for a mouth and 2 black lines for eyelids. And if necessary, do not be afraid to show disobedience. Do not get tired to dig even deeper, to carve a hollow therein. Just empty the last seed after you dig and dig into your thoughts till you empty them out. Perchance the king of Assine may at long last approach.
Thank you. Thank you all. Now I'm gonna unmute myself.
I believe I'm next, George.
That's right, Alex.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Ruggieri. I'm of Greek and Italian descent, as suggested by my name. I'm a PhD candidate in the English department at Tufts University. And I also love Greek dance. I'm part of the sons and daughters of Alexander the Great. So I'm going to read a few of other people's poems, 2 Greeks and 1 American. The first is by Yannis Ritsos. Το νόημα της απλότητας. Πίσω από απλά πράγματα κρύβομαι για να με βρείτε. Αν δεν με βρείτε, θα βρείτε τα πράγματα. Θα αγγίξετε εκείνα που άγγιξε το χέρι μου. Θα σμίξουν τα χνάρια των χεριών μας. To avostiadico fengari ializis tin cousina, sarano menor denzeri, iafto pu sas leo yenete etsi. Fotisi ta di ospiti, keti roniatis meni siopi tu spitiu. Panda isiopi meni ronantis meni. Ikate lexi ina mia exodos, ia mia sinandisi poles fores Mateo meni. Tote ine mia lexi alithini, sanepi meni sti sinandisi. The meaning of simplicity. I hide behind simple things, so you'll find me. If you don't find me, you'll find the things. You'll touch what my hand has touched. Our handprints will merge. The August moon glitters in the kitchen like a tin-plated pot. It gets that way because of what I'm saying to you. It lights up the empty house, and the house's kneeling silence. Always the silence remains kneeling. Every word is a doorway to a meeting, one often canceled. And that's when a word is true, when it insists on the meeting. And the next one is by Nikiforos Fretakos. Ilexis tu marmoro και το αστάλι. Σε όλη μου τη ζωή σχεδιάζω ένα ποίημα, συλλέγοντας λέξεις, στοιχίζοντας λέξεις, μεταθένοντας λέξεις, διοχετεύοντας ένα φως στερεό, να δέσω τις λέξεις, να φτιάξω ένα ποίημα ή και ένα στίχο μοναχά, κατ' εικόνα και ομοίωση του παντός. Γιατί και η λέξη είναι ένα θαύμα. Έχει κάτι από το μάρμαρο, κάτι από τα στάλη, όλα αυτά τα λιγότερο ανθετικά. Συλλογίζομαι πώς μπορεί ως και αυτό του ηλίου το σύστημα να είναι ένας στίχος και πώς θα μπορούσε να φτιάξει κανείς την πιο στερεή και ακόμη την πιο μεγάλη εκκλησία του κόσμου με λέξεις. Words, marble, and steel. All my life, I've been sketching a poem, collecting words, arraying words, shuffling words, channeling a firm light to bind the words, to fashion a poem, or just one verse in the image and likeness of all creation. For the word too is a miracle. It has something of marble, something of steel, of all such less durable things. I reflect that even the sun's system may be a verse, and that one could fashion the firmest and more, the grandest church in the world out of words. And the final poem is by an American, Charles Olson, who, though I focus on modernist literature, he is a postmodernist poet, but I enjoy his references to the Greeks. His poetic speaker for the Maximus poems is Maximus of Tyre. And so this moves from the local and personal to the universal and the realm of ideas. Maximus to Gloucester, letter 27, withheld. I come back to the geography of it, the land falling off to the left where my father shot his scabby golf, and the rest of us played baseball into the summer darkness until no flies could be seen, and we came home to our various piazzas where the women buzzed. To the left, the land fell to the city. To the right, it fell to the sea. I was so young, my first memory is of a tent spread to feed lobsters to Rexall conventioneers, and my father, a man for kicks, came out of the tent roaring with a bread knife in his teeth to take care of a druggist they told him had made a pass at my mother. She laughing, so sure, as round as her face, Heinz, pink and apple, under one of those frame hats women then. This is no bare incoming of novel abstract form. This is no welter or the forms of those events. This, Greeks, is the stopping of the battle. It is the imposing of all those antecedent predecessions, the precessions of me the generation of those facts which are my words. It is coming from all that I no longer am, yet am. The slow westward motion of more than I am. There is no personal strict order for my inheritance. No Greek will be able to discriminate my body. An American is a complex of occasions, themselves a geometry of spatial nature. I have this sense that I am one with my skin, plus this, that forever the geography which leans in on me, I compel backwards, I compel Gloucester to yield, to change. Polis is this. Thank you.
Jim, I think you're up next.
You see me okay? Yeah, all right. My name is Jim Stone. I am a career psychologist and a big fan of modern Greek and ancient Greek literature, which I studied as an undergraduate and have since also had as a kind of avocation throughout my life. And I look forward to presenting you with some of the results of that. I'm going to read two poems written in English. They're kind of companion pieces written about 3 to 4 months apart. First one is called Waiting. You are sitting, waiting there, waiting a long time, wondering how long the wait has been. There, waiting, mute, still, and still waiting, growing tired, growing bored, not knowing. One plan after another foiled because of the tireless sitting, the willful waiting, the lack of will to accomplish anything other than this infernal music. Ruminating. Will I ever leave this room? Will I? How far to the next one? Is anyone there? Is there? Have I ever left this room? Then where would I be? Out? There? Where would that leave me hanging? Where have I ever been left? Where had I ever been? Fuck, I nearly forgot. The room, the room. My next poem was written in Greek. I do that. And I'm very pleased to present this to my colleagues and to everyone else who understands Greek. It's entitled Pros Gremos και πίσω ρέμα. Η σιωπή κυριαρχεί εδώ πέρα. Δεν κουνιέται φύλλο, φίλε, ούτε φέγγει το φεγγάρι. Όμως πλησιάζει, σαν σκιά που σκεπάζει, ολόκληρος, εντελώς. Κάνει υπομονή, αβάσταχτη στους ώμους. Μην ξέροντας τι να πρωτοκάνεις, προς γκρεμός και πίσω γράμμα, στέκεσαι σαν μπάστακος στο λεωφορείο, με κόσμο και φωνές αλόκοτες γύρω-γύρω. Η σκιά που απλώνεται σε βαραίνει. Το κεφάλι σου εξέχει από τον πλήθο, σαν να φωνάξεις. Το φεγγάρι δεν δίνει διαρράκι, περιμένει απόφαση. Εγώ δεν κουνάω ρούπι από εδώ. My next poem, also in Greek, little biographical, autobiographical. So those of you who don't know Greek may be able to pick up on words like Cleveland, Ohio. The title of this poem is "Η κραυγή του Μίτσου." Βοήθεια, βοήθεια. Έχω σκάσει εδώ μέσα. Υδρώνω, μονίμως κρυώνω. Στάζει, δεν έχω παλτό. Πλάνταξα, σου λέω. Θα σκάσω, δε φέρωσέ με αμέσως, επιτέλους. Οι άνθρωποι πιστεύουν, χωρίς απόδειξη, μόνο ενδείξεις, πως τα αγγλικά είναι η μητρική μου γλώσσα. Φυσικά, γεννήθηκα στο Cleveland, Ohio, από γονείς Εβραίους, με ρίζες στην Ανατολική Ευρώπη και Ρωσία. Καμία σχέση η δική μου καταγωγή με την Ελλάδα. Και όμως, παρόλο που φαίνομαι απ' έξω σαν ψηλός και πιστικός Αμερικανός, υπάρχει ένας όντας, μία οντότητα που ζει μέσα μου. Ελληνάκης, Ρωμιός, Λεβέντης, Φωνακλάς, Μερακλής και έχει απαιτήσεις και όρεξη μεγάλη για καυγάδες και καρδιές. Έγινα παλιτσάκι του εαυτού μου. Άντε, πάμε. The last two poems are in English, and they are for, at some point, my grandson, who is who's going to be 4 next October. And I'm also going to take this occasion to welcome my daughter, who is here, whose son this is, and whose name is Apollo. The first poem, and there'll be 2 devoted to him, is called "The O of Awe." My 3.5-year-old grandson, Apollo, writes his name for the very first time in his great little life, letter by loopy letter. A is first and is for the apple that grows in Apollo. So pleasing, delectable, and beautiful to behold. In the letters, Apollo loops together like flowers waiting impatiently for their names, in writing for the very first time. Did I forget to mention the end? The O of astonishment and awe. Apollo, only 3.5 years old. He writes his name today, just a few minutes ago, for the very first time. That's my grandson, Apollo. And this is called At the Kitchen Table for Apollo and his mom, my daughter, Nina. Grandpa, how much do you love me? More than I can explain, unimaginably more. Maybe the space a single blueberry leaves unspoken for. What does that look like, Papu? Talk normal, please. A rainbow or a sky speckled with a flock of rainbow-colored birds, fluttering, circling above, inscribing Apollona and all its misspellings in the fluffy air. Every time I shout your name, another inscription appears. Such gestures make up for the loss I'm not talking about, the rainbow. Look, there's one plump blueberry crowning a spoonful of yogurt. Get messy, little man, indefatigable infant god. Let gooey blue and sour white slop the tabletop with murky clouds, making puddles of this sky. Let those fingers become the bird that saved its own kind. But Grandpa, Papu, You're not making any sense. Good. Pay attention to the blueberry rolling on the tile. Stop. Squat. Study its contours. Squeeze the crown between those chubby little toes and shuffle on the way you do, leaving a blue trail of your blueprints behind. Do this. Do all of these ridiculous things for an old man looking for a place to stand and marvel at whatever's going on. Thank you. I'm good to go.
Jim, what a great homage to name your grandson or ask that your grandson be named Apollo. That's fabulous, just fabulous.
No, I didn't. This was her idea.
Oh, even better. Even better.
Completely. Thank God, so to speak. Thank you.
Anne, I think it's your turn.
I was wondering about that. I was wondering, my name is Ann Taylor. I've been in the Salem State University English department for a long time, teaching lots of different kinds of courses, poetry and English lit and classics also, which included, of course, Greek classics. More recent news is my most recent collection of poetry just came out, this month. And it's kind of a troubled time to be celebrating a poetry book, but I'm happy about it anyway. Actually, I'll read a poem from this book. It's many of the poems in this book, not all, but many of them focus on my mother, on her suffering with dementia and then her dying. So this poem picks up something of, I think, the experience of sadness and grief, how it can haunt you. Aklis, goddess of misery. Agony-armed, she strolls satisfied among battlefield bodies, cheeks bloody, nails untrimmed. She visits on birthdays, Christmas, dates of dying, all the better on days when we're not ready. She hones the pain in the sudden echo of his voice, in the glimpse of the not her passing by, in dreams repeated goodbyes. She stirs grief untimely when his ticket for the annual coin auction arrives, the one my father must miss. When I finger an off-track seam in the country club custom sofa, a defect my aunt would never stitch. When the crowd cheers the play's finale, my mother's favorite seat, now another's. Okay, and the next poem is actually influenced certainly by my years of teaching the Iliad in translation, and finally visiting Troy, which we had to do. And this poem focuses, I have several poems about visiting Troy, but this one is about the, mostly about the wheeled vehicles associated with Troy, called Trojan Transports. The donkey-drawn hay wagon, weathered below rustic, carries us by gravel path, our feet dangling off the back, down a hitchhiker's mile, across Achilles' campsite to Priam's Troy, Helen's Troy, to where the wooden horse waited, silent, for the invitation in. Here now, the boy driver buckles his donkey and his wagon into a sharp U-turn from the gate, shouts to us, Alahais Maladik, a blessing, he said, and smiles at our gule-gula, the polite hail and farewell he taught us on the road. We enter the realm of Homer's war, retrace across ramparts the world-scale tale of Helen's beauty, of fallen towers, and of Achilles' rage that will kill brave Hector, then by chariot drag him in dirt around these walls. And where at last, moved to simplest mercy, Achilles himself will deliver home to the Trojan king, the grieving father, Hector's torn body, lifted carefully onto a smooth, polished Mule Wagon, the warrior's final ride. And the last poem I'll read is a peaceful little poem about visiting the Acropolis on a Sunday morning when the place was almost all deserted. And it's a little bit about the struggle between the academic at the Acropolis, where you have to be thinking, serious thoughts, and just kind of wanting to let go of that. It's kind of a struggle with those desires. It's called Sunday Morning Acropolis. On my solid limestone seat, I listen through the wind to the uncommon quiet. Mostly guards pacing the precinct, the city a murmur, rare rooster crow dim in the distance. A pale lizard stretches out in my shade, maybe mistaking my stillness for one more monument. A lone dark cloud claims eddy blue in its path, its shadow taking each temple, each column, each stretch of white in turn, then gives back the sun. Over us, the black opens up, like Zeus's golden rain to deny. But I dismiss the myth, leave my guidebook shut as I focus on the droplets exploding little dust fountains on the stone at my feet. Enjoy the tingling coolness. Small temporary pools gather in an array of palm-shaped cups, worn into the rocky surface, like those styled for libation by Athenian maidens in watery tunics, or for blessing garlanded oxen. I aim to make eye contact with my lizard, who shows no sign of looking back or of leaving shade's simple peace. Thank you.
Barbara, your turn. Barbara, are you there? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to read. I don't know how to do a big picture. Should I just leave it as is?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay. All right. I've been in Connecticut for the last 4 months, and actually, it's The Last Green Valley. That's the name of my book, The Last Green Valley. And so I'm going to read the first poem. I'm a former teacher and a poet and live in Cambridge. And I've been actually living here now for the last few months. It's very, very much in the country. And this first poem, called The Sheltering, takes place here. And then I'll read 3 other poems. The Sheltering. Next door, grandfather sits on his worn chair by the window. I hear strains of Epiroti music as I walk by on the stone path. The clarinets lament, the bouzouki's wail. Aunt Penner is driving her tractor, the hay baler rhythmically dropping honey-colored squares onto the field. My grandmother is baking. The fragrance wafts through the open door. I am tempted to stay for bread and homemade butter. But the pasture where the horses graze call me, the valley where I go to sing among wild goldenrod and daisies, underbrush birds sticking to my clothes and skin. Along the canal, vines hang like snakes. We swing up onto them and over this meandering waterway that leads to the Quinnebog. If there is wholeness, it is here. The smell of cut hay, wind through trees, the river, the sun on my back. And although this didn't take place in Greece, I think it feels to me like the Greek spirit. That's why I chose that one. The next poem is takes place in Greece. It's called, again, this reflects to me the Greek spirit. Melina's Taverna. Walking from Red Beach after swimming in the crystalline sea, we climb over rust-colored cliffs to lunch at Melina's Taverna near the site of Akrotiri. A child is fishing on the pier, where the owner leads us to a wooden table by the sea. He asks us to pick out our own fresh bream for him to grill. Children are playing cards, laughing in the dark back room. A black lab barks. Surf crackles rocks on the shore. My mother often said, people in the old country were not poor in spirit. When she left northern Ipitos, her family cut strings of attachment. One remaining string carried me back to see what was lost. The family at the table next to us nod and smile. We share fish and bread, a finale of raki, something sweet. And this one is for my mother. And this is the first time I went to Greece. I have another poem I'm working on, my first impressions of coming to Ipitos, but that's still in Cambridge. So I'm reading from here. A lot of my newer poems are there in Cambridge, but so I'm reading from the book. Konitsa, from my mother, 1981. Wind bristles before the thunder. The river Ayus, a ribbon of green, barely seen in mist. Your childhood friend, Fortina, asked me to lie down on the russet couch. Cream lace on its arms, a thicker lace on windows facing the Pindus Mountains. The thunderstorm comes. I hear it come. I feel strangely at home when Fortina tells me stories I've heard before. Your donkey, decorated with wildflowers, week-long wedding feasts, a hard life with your father away for years. A mile from here is Albania, the white church you went to as a child. The guard at the border remembers your father. Fortina puts a cool cloth on my forehead, gives me sweets, lukumi, kurolaitis. She talks of school days with you when there was laughing and singing, before the closing of Greek schools and threats of war. Your father came back when you were 12 and you left this alpine valley, your uncles and grandmothers forever. Picnics with your donkey, the white church, the gray stone farmhouse. I have this to take with me. And my last poem, one more poem, thank you. And my last poem is my last trip to Greece with my father. And I just remembered this poem and remember the place. It's kind of etched in my mind. It's called Selina. Our last night in Santorini, Dad limps down the white marble steps to Fira's famous restaurant. The waiter runs up, takes his hand. Outside, he asks? Yes, we nod, enchanted by the long pier jutting into the Aegean, white linen tablecloths ruffling. Waves lap the pier, strong winds blow. It is too raw. We race inside to the quiet elegance of piano music, vases of red roses on tables and mantels. The glass door clicks us in. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anastasia Vasas. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm a first-generation Greek. My parents were born in Koutalis, which is in Turkey, and were refugees in the 1920s during the population exchange. I'm going to take us to the islands and then to the mainland. Tinos, August 2012. The island holds dust like a bowl, but not for long. When the wind cracks, the sand snakes, the priest's shutters are open, the rooster blusters the morning sun. In the center of the powdery town, a modern-day Sisyphus ascends to the Virgin Mary's Church on hands and knees, the bone he has to pick with God between his teeth. Dust in his lungs, his coarse face is flooded blood hot. A scrim of heat rises off his back like a mirage. We walk the sandy roads hand in hand and observe the sacred contour. We stop for bread, tomatoes, cheese, a bottle of water. We bow our heads, having never been hungry. Anthera. On this white island ringed in blue and dust, we climb ghost steps leading up out of the cauldron. You and I are Greeks today, pretending we're on the surface of the moon. A widow dressed in black guards the church. Here at the edge of the Aegean, she tells us there's more wine than water, more churches than houses, more donkeys than people. Feed me a country that curves rogue waves round its edge, then returns them. I thirst, I hunger, baffled crater. Caldera, caldaria. Language laces my Greek tongue with the lips of a Spaniard. We're at the hem of the volcano. I lift my dress, the breeze on my legs. My next poem is titled The Barrow, and a barrow, thank you, the barrow is another, one definition of barrow is a burial mound. It comes with an epigraph from John 12:24. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. The barrow. The earth is settling. It's been over a year and still no headstone to interrupt the earth's icy crust. The guise of the sun hits the heap of dust. I haven't eaten and I hunger. Before she died, she craved oysters baked in rock salt, the succulent tongues sheltered, mute, the shells stacked on a cracked blue plate. The antique Greeks tied adjective to noun, small coin to name koliva, the mournful food they bartered to keep alive their dead, odd treat that mixes bitter and sweet. I can see the recipe in mother's hand, boiled wheat berries, parsley, yellow raisins, sesame seeds. Amass the koliva in the shape of a burial mound on a platter. Crush crackers on top to keep the final coat of sugar from melting into the mound. Some recipes call for pomegranate seeds when they're in season. I add 6, just in case. And my last poem is, thank you, Thessaloniki, 4 a.m. Here they dance with arms raised above their heads, the middle of the body suspended like a question. They bend their knees as their feet describe the arc of a forgotten journey. I've been up all night drinking ouzo. My plane leaves in an hour. The rebetika pulses in my veins. I have an exquisite headache. I'm in love with this city of dusty streets and ancient churches. For now it is I on this empty road, the car radio, my only cohort. Metallic strains of bouzouki seep through the air like the thick smoke of a Gauloise. Even the sardine fishermen sleep. The heat has begun to settle, a blanket. When the sun comes up, I'll be gone. 3,000 ancestors ask how I straddle the sea, afoot on either shore. I peer through the windshield at Orion's belt in search of home. The 3 sisters are the stars that shine in the middle. I race through the dark, speaking in tongues. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much to the Greek Institute and to Dimitra, and I'll finish with two poems. Well, one poem and one translation. As Fred mentioned, I teach at Suffolk University, and I teach classics and translation and poetry. This one's called The Evening Star. I boarded the Blue Line at Aquarium Station. The only empty seat was the one by that young, head back, eyes closed, exhausted-looking father, holding his sleeping child in his folded arms. It was already supper time, and the evening star, as Sappho sings, was calling all of the creatures home to their mother through the rush hour traffic. Subway was coming out of the tunnel's mouth. And I was 60 when I suddenly felt a tiny hand stop pulling at my sleeve. In his sleep, the child I never had was reaching out for me, while the father I never became kept his eyes shut. And all the way to my stop at Orion Heights, nothing disturbed our dream. And I'd like to finish with a short poem translation by the great 20th century poet Rilke. It's one of the sonnets to Orpheus. As soon as we say the world, its meaning, like moving clouds, is already morphing. But flawlessness must stay the same, at home in its perfect original form. To sing it afresh, this paradox of constancy and constant flux, it takes the god of the golden lyre, who strikes the note that's clearer and higher. As utterly baffling as suffering is, the lessons of love are even stranger, and nothing will ever lift the veil and tell us why we die. It's still that singular singing whose daily endeavor is praise of the earth and welcoming us. Thanks so much. Good to see all of you again.
See you.
Yeah. Beautiful. Are we?
Beautiful.
That's it.
Are we finished?
Mute, currently unmuted. 4+A button.
Question and answers, anyone? Question and answers?
We can certainly do that if anyone has questions.
Let's go until the bottom of the hour. Take 5 minutes or so and see if there are any hot questions among the group.
Terry has left the meeting.
I have a question for Jim Stone. Where in Cleveland are you from?
I knew that. Shaker Heights, Ohio is where I grew up.
Oh, very good. I grew up on the west side.
Yep. I'm a West Side wannabe. That's all.
Alert. Katzenrau has left the meeting.
If you were to recommend, since so many of you teach poetry as well as write poetry, for us to begin reading poetry, Greek poetry, and I will say in translation, where do you think we should start? There are so many great ones, so many great Greek poets, ancient and more modern.
If I can chime in, I would say, I mean, one of many, but easy to find. He comes in many translations, which I think are worth taking a look at. But he's also, I think it's also the nature of his poetry to be as challenging as it is to translate it. The poetry comes through even in what you could call, modest to mediocre translations. It still rises to the occasion, in my opinion. So that would be a good place, I think, just to leaf through one of his collected books. I think, eyes will fall on things that will be of interest and approachability.
Who was that again? Say the name, please.
Konstantinos Kavafis.
Kavafis. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There are also great recordings of these men reading their poetry, those who lived, in the age of recording. And sometimes to hear it in the voices, as we've heard today, it almost doesn't need translations.
Poppy, if you delve into Cavafy, be very selective about the translations that you find. Some are very wooden and really don't do justice to the poetry, and some are much more lyrical and really reflect the euphony and the style of Cavafy much better. There's an old translation by Ray Dalvin from the 1940s, which has its flaws, but it's a nice translation. And Keeley and Sherrard have also done a very nice translation. It's an old one. And some of the more recent ones, although they might be more accurate in terms of meaning, are not always very good. Also, Peter Bean, who has spoken at our translation seminars that Vasiliki runs, has done a very nice collection of translated Greek poetry, poems by various translators, and also Keeley and Sherrard have done several very good collections. So I think those would be good starting points that would introduce you, if you want to read in English, that would introduce you to various fairly contemporary poets, 20th century at least.
Thank you for all those recommendations. I appreciate it.
Do you have time? Just there is I would start with an anthology to check to see what is the style. There are plenty of anthologies.
Yes.
My favorite is the one by Nanos Valauritis and Maskaleris Thanasis. But I also, since you talked about, Nick mentioned the audio files, the Woodbury Poetry Room at Harvard University has amazing recordings by all poets who in here.
Wow.
Also, may I say something? Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Hi. There is a magazine, an electronic magazine in Greece. It's called Hartis, and you can find it under hartismag.gr. And it's a great forum to, of course, it's only in Greek, to see what's going on nowadays. And also they have poetry read by either the poets themselves or actors. And I think it's a very, very good link to know. Also, there's another electronic magazine, contemporary. It's called Periou. It's PERIOU.gr.
This is amazing. And also poeticanet.com, amazing.
Well, that too.
Person too.
As a remark about the Woodbury Poetry Room makes me want to tip my hat to the former director of the Poetry Room, Stathis Xaviaris, and some of that recorded material is really through his hard work. Also, his prose is really poetic, and if you can find When the Tree Sings, his prose poems really about the Nazi occupation of his native village. And then his novel that followed that, The Heroic Age, is a great novel about the Greek Civil War right after World War II. He also did a translation of Cavafy's canon, the 100 poems.
Wow. His latest book, Achna, which is the only one written in Greek by him, is amazing. I wrote a poem about this.
Will it get translated into English?
I had asked him, and he said, it's only me that could do this.
Oh, there it is. There it is. I should say also that he passed away this past winter.
Oh.
That's why a tip of the hat is in order.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, I'll share a poem I wrote with the title Achna in his homage.
It's a wonderful poem.
I don't know how far you meant to go back for beginning to read Greek poetry, but I'll put my teacher's hat on, and if you haven't already done it, read the Iliad and the Odyssey, read Sappho, read the tragedians, then read the Iliad again, which deserves a lifetime of reading. And these stories and these characters live through centuries after them.
Right.
So, you've got to go back to them if you haven't already lived there yet.
No, I have.
Go back anyway.
You're right. You're right.
And this year we lost so many poets. Limulan, Anus Malauritis, Javiera, so many.
Oh. Katerina Gelaitiruk.
Yes.
I know Maria has talked about possibly doing something for Dimula and Rook and maybe Stratis as well.
Oh, yeah.
We could have a Greek Dead Poet Society.
Well, we definitely want to, especially because Stratis Javiaras, when he first immigrated to the United States, lived in our house for several years.
Wow.
Really?
Yes. And,
Wow.
and also my father has translated Maria Nefeli, the book by Elidis, into English. So that's also available, as is George Seferis, his translations into English, the journals, poets' journals. So if you are looking for the Nobels,
Yeah, I just wanted to second that, Dimitra, especially the Journals of Seferis were a profoundly important book that your father worked on, and I know he knew Seferis.
Yes, and Elidis as well. So, well, wonderful. Well, this was a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much. The sun is back out here in Cambridge. I don't know if it is where all of you are, but
Back Bay as well. Back Bay as well. Time to go outside now.
exactly, perfect timing. Everybody's spiritually enlightened and re-energized to face the world again. So thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you so much, Poppy. Wonderful.
Thank you, Poppy.
Oh, thank you. This is
George.
great.
Thank you all.
Really good.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
Dimitra.
Bye,
and
everyone.
Thank you, George.
See you soon.
Thank you, George.
Bye-bye.